Hi, this is Jacob Sapochnik. Hi, everybody, with enchantinglawyer.com and our podcast. And today I have a very interesting and exciting guest, Derek Coburn. Derek is a financial advisor. He's the author of Networking is Now Working. And is also the founder of a very unique networking group called Cadre in Washington, D.C. And welcome to the show, Derek. How are you today?
Hey, Jacob. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm very happy that you're here because like I told you before, I read your book this weekend. Before starting reading the book, I didn't know what to expect. I thought, oh, maybe it's another networking book, and we have so many of those. But when I finished reading it, I was just I stopped and I thought, you know what? I think there's something here. There's something different, and maybe I've discovered a new way to not only build my network but also connect with people. And I'm very, very excited to be able to ask you about this book. But why don't you tell us briefly about yourself?
Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
Well, I know you're a financial advisor, but why don't you tell me a bit, kind of, your beginning as in your profession and kind of what led you to find out this strategy about networking and then, of course, writing the book.
Sure. So I started off right out of college in 1998 in the wealth management business and built a pretty successful career. I still am a partner and own a wealth management firm with two other guys. We have 15 employees, and especially by their metrics, I'm talking about the broker dealer. I was successful. I was a cold calling machine, and was qualifying for the trips and whatnot. But what I realized, and I think that there's a quote from Gary Vee in the Thank You Economy where he's introducing a lot of the different tools and social platforms and ways that you can market and develop relationships with people. And he said, if you're in legal or finance, then you're pretty much screwed. That because of compliance, because of regulations. I mean, I don't know how it is with law firms and with attorneys, but to this day, I'm not even allowed to have endorsement, or I shouldn't say endorsements, because on LinkedIn, there's something called endorsements, but I'm not allowed to have testimonials from clients. Like, you're not even allowed to have those on there. And so, I realized that while I'm good and I've built a practice with some great people on the financial advice side of things, I've always been an entrepreneur and a marketer at heart. And that industry, my industry, was very limiting in terms of my ability to go out and market and develop relationships with people the way that pretty much every other industry is able to do. Right. So that led me to, I'd put together my own small 20 to 25 person networking group around my wealth management practices, I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit, and learned a lot about how to build a network and how to connect people. And my wife and I in 2011 started Cadre, and we now have over 100 CEOs, business owners, entrepreneurs. And I think the thing that makes us different and what makes it work for the right people is that we're vetting not only for quality and successful professionals, but we're vetting for this pay it forward mindset. So everyone that is in Cadre shows up focused on how they can add value for the other people as opposed to pushing their own agenda or service.
Right. And then tell me the background for the book. What made you decide to write that book?
So the background for the book is, in the book, really, I think I mentioned Cadre once in the book maybe, and it's more just to highlight, add some additional credibility. But the book is really the story of how I stopped going to these larger networking events because I really found them to be ineffective and not a good use of my time, and built this small group around my best clients and some of their key advisors and vendors, and found ways to bring them together online, offline, to add value for them, to make valuable connections for them, and then to position myself in an authentic way to meet more of the types of people I wanted to meet for my business.
And I think that one of the most interesting things about this book is the change of state of mind of professionals. I mean, we are attorneys in a similar way, just like financial planners and CPAs and bankers. Our livelihood depends on the referrals, the business we get from people that know us or find us through a good word of mouth. And I think that it's just hard. It's harder these days to try to get that kind of business because many people, they kind of seem desperate. And before we started the show, we talked about Chris Brogan, who is actually who gave you a beautiful forward in the book, introducing the book.
Yep.
And in one of his emails recently, he mentioned that he was talking about it. He said, networking will feed you today, but connections are going to last you a lifetime, and they're going to build what is going to be the foundation of your business. And I think to me, this is actually this is the new networking, and this is what you talk about in the book.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been blessed to come across people like Chris, and I think that my focus is always on how can I identify the types of people that I want to have a relationship with, and then once I feel like I've identified them, what can I do to potentially add value not only for them but for the people that are in my network already.
Right. So let's go deeper into this understanding of networking. What do you think networking is not working today?
Well, I think that there are two big picture reasons why it's not working. And the first is if you were to ask 20 professionals, ask 20 people 20 of your listeners, how do you define networking? You're going to get 20 different answers. And some may be similar, and some may be in line with the way you approach networking. I don't think anyone's definition is incorrect. I just think it's a broad term. Some people network to get new business immediately. I've never found that to work, and I find the people that do that to be super annoying. But there's still a lot of those people out there. I think some people view networking as a way to get a new job, transition into a new career. And, for me, if I'm networking, showing up at an event with a focus on trying to meet and develop mutually beneficial long-term relationships with other professionals, then I'm not valuable to either of the segments I just mentioned because they wanted to meet somebody that could potentially help them get a new job or a client. So I think, I think that the success of your networking is going to be dependent upon how effectively you've surrounded yourself with other people who are doing it for the same reasons you are. And I think the second reason that networking is not working is that the role that the larger traditional event plays in networking. And most of those definitions would probably include attending larger events. And I already mentioned why I network. I think that's why a lot of people network. And if you compare it, I reference in my book a quote from David Siteman Garland where he says the large networking events are like nightclubs and that everyone's looking for a professional one-night stand. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And if you stick with the dating analogy and you are you don't want to just go out and date. You want to settle down and fall in love. If there were books called How to Find My Dream Wife or How to Meet the Love of My Life, they don't begin chapter 1, step 1, keep going to bars and nightclubs all the time.
Right.
They talk about host dinner parties and go on double dates and leverage your friends. And so I think that most people find networking to be ineffective because it's most of the advice they get, most of the books they read, and some of them are very good and well-intentioned, but it all involves how to do the big event thing a little bit better. And I think we can be more effective at developing relationships and making connections by taking the time we were spending going to these larger events and applying it to some more intimate, curated affairs that are set up on your turf with your people.
Right. And, I think that networking has become part of business for professionals. And I think the reason why it's so hard is because, you have a list of things you have to do. You have to have a website, you have to have a blog, you have to have this, and you have to go and do networking. If you don't do networking, you feel that you are not feeding the business. And one of the things that I really liked about the examples you put in the book is the guy who comes into the event, and you meet him, and he basically doesn't care what you do. He's pitching you for like 3 minutes, and he shoves the card in your face. And I think when I read this, I'm like, yeah, I've been there. You see those people, and you don't know what to do anymore. It's so frustrating when you spend an hour and a half paying $25 to get in somewhere, and you leave with a bunch of business cards, and you don't even know who these people are. And so, and again, this is something that the person that is there coming to the event, let's say it's me, and the other person, we are there for the same purpose. We want to close a quickie. And like you said, that's not how, even in dating, the quickie is not going to get you to the marriage. I mean, in most cases,
Yep.
right?
Sure.
And so right now where people are networking, what do you think is the biggest problem that they face or they do?
Well, I think, if it's going to the events,
Right.
I just think that the events are set up in a way now that even people that have more of a long-term approach are being sucked into it. And what I mean by that is I introduced the idea of networking 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 in the book. And networking 1.0 is where you're doing it to benefit yourself directly. That I'm going to network because I want a client, I want a referral, and that's why you're doing it. Networking 2.0, which is what a lot of the advice lately centers around, is focus on the person you're meeting and how you can help them. Well, I think the problem with that is that if you are looking for marriage and you go to a nightclub and you meet someone else who's also looking for marriage, it's still going to be really weird and awkward if you mention that 30 seconds into the conversation because
Right.
you're at a nightclub. And I just think that that going to these larger networking events, most of us have our guard up, and most of us know that we're much more likely to run into somebody who wants something out of us than we are someone who is taking a long-term approach. And so, I compared going to all the time that we spend going to these larger events to cold calling. And that's how I built my business. And it's no secret that you spend a lot of time doing that to yield a client or to yield a few people that are worthwhile talking to. But the other thing that you get with cold calling is you get this constant negative reinforcement. People hanging up on you, people not answering the phone, people blowing you off even when you do set up meetings with them, to the point where you say, I know this is a waste of my time and not the best way to meet clients compared with referrals or other things, but I really want to get out of this phase of my business because it's not enjoyable. Whereas I think going to the larger networking events, you can go to these things and meet nice people who are harmless and have conversations with them that are pleasant, and nothing comes from that. And because you're not getting that negative feedback, you go to these things for years and never actually step back and say, whoa, I'm spending a month, I'm spending like 100 hours a year going to these events and really not getting anything out of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think once people understand that, it'll be more, it'll be easier to change the way they do networking right now. Again, the concept in your book, and I want to go through this maybe real quick, the connector, that thing that you created, and maybe we'll go through those points one by one. So the connector is it's broken down. It's clients, open doors, nucleus, events and community, and trigger. Why don't we
Yep.
go through each one of them, and you can explain what it is real quick in an example. So the first one is clients.
Yep. So can I tell another quick story to
Sure.
maybe create a little more context around this? So networking 3.0 is this idea that you're networking to benefit your existing clients and people in your network. And the way that one of the big things that sort of tipped the scale for me, I tell the story in the book, was a client of mine. I changed the name, since it was a client, but I refer to him as David the Landscaper.
Right.
And David the Landscaper called me up and said, "Hey, Derek, one of my really good clients asked if I would do them a favor and would take a meeting with one of their, I think it was their brother-in-law, forget what I said in the book, but brother-in-law, and he's a financial advisor. I let him know that I'm really happy with you and I'm not looking to make any changes. And they said, no worries, no pressure, but it would still really, it would mean a lot to us if you still took this meeting. So he told me he was taking the meeting, and he called me the next day after it took place, and he said by the end of the meeting, he had been proposed a hypothetical portfolio that showed if my client had invested his money with this other firm instead of with me for the past couple of years, he would have earned an extra 2 to 3% per year. And my client's response was, well, Derek referred me to clients that generated over $2 million of business for my company during that time. So in theory, Derek could have lost half the money in my portfolio, which I didn't do. And I still would have been much better off working with him. And I realized, I was doing this, and I call this the ultimate tiebreaker, because I think that for a lot of us, especially trusted advisors, attorneys, financial advisors, bankers, our primary competition is indifference. It's not that people are walking around saying, oh my gosh, I love my attorney so much and I can never imagine leaving her under any situation. It's that they think that she's good. And and there's more pressing issues at hand that they have to worry about than worrying whether or not they could find somebody that's just a little bit better. And so this idea of being an ultimate tiebreaker is that without compromising the quality of your work and what your clients expect of you already, that you're also getting to understand their business and becoming an additional business development rep for them in their company. And I think that I was doing that already, but I wasn't being intentional about it, and I started to bake that into almost everything I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that example was just unbelievable, because we try to do it in my own practice, where we have clients come in and they, we do immigration law here. So somebody moves into the country, we do their visa, but they're also looking for a house. So we'll put them in touch with a good realtor, with a good CPA, trying to get that as part of the service, just like you said. As opposed to like, well, I don't know, I don't care. Try to, making them feel that we actually want to find them somebody who's going to find them their house or their do their taxes correctly.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference, just like you said.
I mean, let's say if you have like real estate agents for clients, or a real estate agent for a client, and you're doing you're providing all of their legal advice, and you refer them a client who buys a house from them. Like, how terrible do you have to be at your job for that person to ever stop working with you if you're doing that consistently and you're thinking about them? And that's not my message. I'm not saying go out and test how bad you can be at what you do if you're also doing this. But obviously it works really well.
It's kind of like your answer if somebody says, well, why would I go with you? In addition to being the best attorney or the financial guy, I'm also going to be trying to be your concierge in a way. For services, which makes and then somebody else is not going to do it.
Yep.
So that's what you meant by the client's concept. What do you mean by open doors?
Yeah. So the connector acronym, it sort of walks people through the process for how to build their own 20 to 25 person. I call it an unnetworking group, which is what I did in my wealth management practice 5-6 years ago, and made a massive difference in terms of the what I was doing for my existing clients, the quality of our relationships, the quality of the introductions I was getting, and of course my bottom line. And so a lot of what I talk about in this process can be pulled out on a one-off basis and applied, but it's also hopefully set up in a way that if somebody wants to try to build it out, that they'll be able to do so. So the clients is all about starting with your best clients who also own businesses who would benefit by convening and getting together with other professionals on a regular basis to develop relationships and learn more about how they can help one another out.
So the premise of your networking concept is create your own groups, which are going to be based on quality people that have the same kind of ideas and interests, as opposed to going to these massive events and trying to waste your time.
Exactly.
And you go through that process. And that's the process we're talking about right now. So clients is finding those people.
And then open doors would just be that that to find other people in addition to those clients. And because I had clients who were retired and they weren't going to be interested in doing this. I had clients who were not in business development roles they were chief financial officers or something like that, so that it wasn't going to benefit them. But there's a couple of different areas to opening doors, and that it's really people that you don't know well or that well yet, or they're not already clients. So it's a way to after you have some of your clients on board and you've explained to them this new role that you're going to be serving in for them, the ultimate tiebreaker and the ultimate resource, that you want to meet some of their key professionals and key vendors who might also be a good fit. So obviously that's the low-hanging fruit, and then there may be other dormant ties in your network that people you haven't talked to in a year or two. Hey, I just want to let you know I'm putting this together and want to catch up and see what's new, what's going on with your business. A great opportunity, obviously, to tell them that part of your value proposition is now to identify and work with clients who you believe you can also be an advocate for and uncover opportunities for them in their business. And then it's also going out to LinkedIn and Twitter and rounding out the group, if you will, with other successful people and getting to know them. And I never mentioned the group to those people. I just said, hey, I don't know anyone who does what you do. And a big part, something that's very important to me, is being a resource for my clients and my network. I get asked all the time for recommendations to people in a variety of industries, and I'd like to just schedule a call with you for 10 minutes to learn more about you and your business. And you learn a lot about somebody in those 10 minutes and whether or not you should extend the conversation to invite them to participate in your group.
So that's what you meant by open doors, right?
Yep.
That's what about the Nucleate?
Yeah, so Nucleate is where what kind of Nucleate means that you're at the center, right? And you're the glue that's making all of this happen. So with clients, it's an interview process. It's talking to them. It's learning more about not just their business, but you may have an IT company that you work for, and they're an IT company, and the names of a handful of their clients, but you don't necessarily know what their key trigger events are. What size of the company is ideal for them? What's the pain point? What is the person complaining about that normally hires people like you? And so it's this discovery process that's adding a lot of value with your clients. And then the opening doors where you're meeting new people. Nucleate is my process for taking all of these people you've met and all the conversations you've had and narrowing it down to the 20 or 25 that you think would be a good fit, and how to invite them and how to describe to them what it is you're trying to build and put together.
And I think that what I like about this concept of you being the center is that you're always there. So they're always going to remember you in one way or another. If you're creating the event, if you're reaching out to them, if you're trying to send them somebody, you are the center. And you're always going to be the center because you're the one who organized it. So to me, it's just a brilliant idea of how you kind of, you never fade away because there's always going to be another event. There's always going to be another thing that you're going to do. You mentioned, I think that in the events you talk about inviting clients to, like baseball games and things like that, where again, it doesn't have to be business. It can be also on a personal level, connecting with people, because you may find something, you may learn something about somebody on a private setting more than just in a meeting sitting at a table, right?
Yeah, so like events, which is a good segue into the next phase anyways, it is this idea of not only hosting your own, but also how you can maybe leverage other people's events as well. But something that I had a lot of success with that I think might be really relevant for your audience is I started hosting wine tastings on a quarterly basis. And whenever I host a client appreciation event, that's what it is first and foremost. It's client appreciation. There's no agenda. If I do something, put something nice together for them and they have a great time, then it was well worth it, in my opinion. But what I'm doing by hosting these events is I'm putting them in a position to invite other people who they may not, but they may be good prospective clients for me as well. And each wine tasting event it would be at a really nice restaurant, and I would have about a 10-minute educational type presentation. I wasn't selling my firm, I wasn't pitching my firm, but it might be understanding the difference between different types of real estate investments, or whether or not they should convert their IRA to a Roth IRA. And what that did is it gave me an opportunity to share some good intel and knowledge with my clients and their guests, but also in a number of instances, I think people would think in the back of their minds, why isn't my financial advisor mentioned this to me before? So I'm starting to chip away at that indifference a little bit. And the other thing that's interesting is that they even if they don't think that, they may say, why, this is really great. I never get invited by my attorney to go to wine tasting events with my friends. And the reason you don't have to do any selling is if you have conversations with your clients about it beforehand. Your clients there will do a lot of the selling for you. So the purpose of these wine tasting events, again, it wasn't to get new clients. It was first and foremost to do something really great for my existing clients, but it also allowed me to meet a lot of other people I normally wouldn't have met otherwise. Right. And without me pushing or selling, a very significant percentage of them would say, here's my card, can you follow up with me? Or I'd like to learn more about you and your firm. And just the first year I did them, I think in 2008, I did 4. And I did like $150,000 of revenue that came from new clients as a result of doing those wine tastings.
Right. And when you invite people to those events, the new people come in, do you specifically ask them what kind of people you're looking for, or they can just invite anybody they want?
So what I say, they can invite whoever they want, and that I would love if you invited people that fit very basic criteria, that you believe that they financially, that they are in a position where they would be a good fit for my firm and be an ideal client for me. And they also really like to drink. They like to drink good wine, and
right.
and they're social and like meeting people. But I would never make it a requirement. Now, on the flip side of that, if I have strategic partners, the estate planning attorney or the accountant, those people that I worked with,
right.
their entry ticket was bringing a prospective client for me.
Okay, and you will ask for that. You would
yep.
say,
and I would reassure. Yeah, I'd reassure them. You're not going to be. I'm not pitching to anybody. But if you think about it, the way to ask is say, look, I have a number of my clients that I would love to introduce you to, and a number of them will be there, and I want you to come so that I can make some of these introductions. But I also want you to bring 1 or 2 people, knowing that I'm not going to, give a pitch. We're mainly just looking to have fun and drink some good wine. I want you to bring a couple of people that you think might be interesting for me to meet.
Right. And one of the another concept that I really think is important, and it's very common in the our industries, is that you gave an example of when you refer clients to an attorney. You gave an example of an attorney that is really good, and she's probably the best in her field, and you refer clients to her, but you never got a single case from her back. And so when you do the referrals, you truly have the client's best interest, because you know that, well, I could have referred to somebody else down the street and he may send me more clients, but he's less good than that person, but I'm still going to refer her the business. And I think that what do you think is the importance of doing that this way, where you're going to send people only to the sources that are going to be the best for them, not expecting anything in return from the sources?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to. Part of the value proposition for your clients is that if I can make their lives easier by connecting them to the right people who provide the right services when they need them, I become even more valuable to them in my role as a financial advisor. And so I think that it's a slippery slope when you're motivated to do things based on a quid pro quo type relationship. And I think that when the motivation is pure, and I think one of the main reasons why I never got referrals from her is because her ideal client was more like in the 25 to 50 million and up range, and my ideal client was more in the 10 or in like the 2 to 20 million dollar range. And so I think that that was on me where I was I was putting them in the hands of somebody good, but ultimately I found a few people that were much more in my wheelhouse in terms of we're trying to focus on the same types of clients, and it ended up working out that way. But yeah, I think if anytime somebody's saying I'm going to refer this person to this attorney because I want this attorney to refer me business at some point, is setting themselves up to have some problems in a variety of ways down the road.
Right. It's just it's a natural feeling that you do want to, especially between attorneys and other professionals, where we send somebody over, we email them and say, I send you a client. Maybe somewhere deep inside we say, well, hopefully they'll send us somebody back. But I do understand, and in my case, I always do the same thing. I mean, I'll send people to the people I feel are going to be the best, because if they're not going to be the best, then it's going to get worse for us, because you send me to this guy. Is he a friend of yours? Because he screwed up my case, and that's probably going to be worse for you on the long term.
Yep.
And Derek, I think part of your premise is the creating this private events, being the source, the connector, is the new way of networking. Let's talk a bit about online networking. What do you think about the LinkedIn? Or we met through LinkedIn. You connected with me on LinkedIn. What do you think about Twitter, Facebook, and the offline and the online networking? And what can you talk about? Some tips of that.
Sure. So I think, the next C, which stands for community, I talk about a lot of the online tools that I use. And
Right.
much more so than any social, a way that I do most of my online networking is not via a social site, but it's using a tool called Contactually. And what Contactually is fantastic. I use it for a lot of different things, but just to give you a quick overview of like the core functionality. So what Contactually lets me do is it lets me create buckets, it's what they call them, of clients, prospective clients, centers of influence. I can group people together around whatever I want to group them by, and I can then assign a certain time period to say if I don't hear from this client or they don't hear from me every 60 days, I want to be reminded and notified. And I can hook this up to not only my email, but to LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else, so that if I have all of my tier one clients in a 30-day bucket and I say I want to make sure I'm at least talking to them in some way, shape, or form every 30 days, and 30 days goes by and it hasn't happened, then I get the notification. So that's really good, and there's a number of other things it does that it's the ultimate tool, I think, for people that are focused on connecting and networking and building up their network. It has a lot of great features, and again, I think it's especially good for advisors like us, where you have recurring revenue relationships, and it's not just a transaction where it's important to stay in touch and in contact with them. So I'll say that, and then I also think that I think that Twitter is the best social network for what we're talking about here. I think it's easier to put networking 3.0, where you're focused on your clients and how you can identify opportunities for them by just being a good listener on Twitter. And that's where more of the conversations take place. Twitter became really good for me when I stopped viewing it as a way to push stuff out. And I stopped worrying about why isn't this person following me back? Because ultimately I don't care if people follow me back. If I know I can listen in on somebody that I want to develop a relationship with, and I can wait for a time where I might be able to add value for them or help them, it doesn't matter to me whether they're following me back or not. It lets me listen in and listen for what my clients and what my network might need, and be a resource while I'm sitting in my boxers at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and I agree. I think online you really have to understand how the different mediums work. Twitter is not about pushing content; it's about listening. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk has a lot of interesting take on that. It's talking about
Yep.
Twitter being, you use the search box on Twitter. That's the gold. Where you can search for terms, if it's attorneys, who's talking about different areas of law or different, you can just jump in and just, provide value and then just wait. And it's not going to be immediate. And it's different on LinkedIn, where you go there for research, for connections. It's more about, it's more static than Twitter. And Facebook has a different, of course, approach, where you can build a community on Facebook and then bring in people and create more of these connections offline that are online. So But you do see the value of online networking
Oh
as
yeah.
being powerful and growing further in the future.
Yep. Sounds like you do too.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that again, time is biggest problem that we have. And you started with the book saying that we can't afford to spend 3-4 hours every week going out there and wasting our time. So I think the online world allows us to be more selective and try to research people and find out whether I want to connect with Derek because he is the best connector in the East Coast before I even reach out to him. And then, but the physical meeting is important because, especially if it's a local referral, they don't want to they don't want to see you. They want to see where you work. But online saves time. That's how I see it. It's a
Yep.
huge powerful tool.
I have like a little rule of thumb. For what I tweet, and I always ask myself, would I walk into a live networking event and say this out loud? And I think that I didn't do it much before, but Gary
Right.
Vee had a big influence on me in this regard. But I almost never retweet a compliment about me or my book or what have you, because I just don't think the people that follow me care that much about it. I wouldn't
Right.
walk into a networking event and say, "Hey, everybody, Jacob loved my book
Right.
and he thinks you should read it too." I wouldn't do that. And so I would say that 80%, I don't know, I haven't even checked, I'm guessing. I would say that 80% of my tweets are at reply tweets, where the people that if I reply to you and say, "Look forward to meeting you," or "Thanks for reaching out," or "You did the same to me," the only people that see that are the people that follow both of us. No one else sees that. So these conversations that can take place that are private for all intents and purposes, it's really how I use it, and not to push out information about me.
Right. And so, what do you think is going to be the future of networking in the next few years? I mean, building those private groups, or what is the next step?
I think so. I mean, I think that I offer up this idea that if you had if you had a practice, if your law firm was so successful that you were spending every minute of every day working with clients that you loved and they loved you, and you had a line out the door of people who wanted at you, that wanted to pay your top hourly rate, and you just didn't have time to deal with them, you would never go to a networking event. And I don't think that there are a lot of us that are there yet, but some are closer than others. And the people who are closer to that world, uh, where it's really, really ideal and exciting and rewarding in terms of the relationship they have with their clients, what have you, those they don't have as much time to go to networking events, so you're less
Right.
likely to see them. And I think the reason why you're way more likely to run into people that are trying to sell you something is they're the ones that have a lot of extra time on their hands,
Right.
and they can afford to go to these events all day long. And that's and so I don't think it lies in improving the larger event model. Maybe it does. And certainly with the events that we run with Cadre, we've kicked people out, we've banned people for life from coming to our events. We do it in a way so that it's almost always our members and people they're inviting. And so I think that's part of it, but I also think it's this idea of doing a lot of these smaller things where I talk about it. The TOR, to
Right.
round it out, stands for trigger ongoing reciprocation. And it's this idea that you've built this network and you've done a lot of really great things for a lot of people. And I think that a lot of them are grateful and they want to help. They want to help me in that scenario. They want to help you if they're your clients. But I don't think anyone ever sets aside an hour out of their day on their calendar to sit down. Okay, who can I refer to Jacob because he's been so good to me?
Right.
And so I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to position the people who want to help us to be able to do that very easily and very effectively.
And so the bottom line is that if we want to be effective in networking, we should create those targeted events that we know who's going to come there, and we can kind of pre-select them before we even go there.
Yep.
That's really the best way to make use of our time. Derek, as we come to the end of our show, would you mind sharing a favorite quote that you have with our audience? It can be
Sure. Sure.
give us some
So,
context.
yeah, I mentioned this in. I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
So it's a quote I mentioned in my book, and it comes from Seth Godin, but it's not in one of his books. He said this at an event of his that I attended a year and a half ago, where he's saying that this next revolution that we're entering in is the connection revolution, and the value of your connections is likely worth more than the value of the service that you provide. And a lot of what we talked about today, a lot of what I talk about in my book is this, having connections and nurturing the connections and your network and finding ways to add value for them. It oftentimes, at least in my experience, I've been able to retain clients. I've been able to meet new clients and develop relationships for my business in a way that I would not have been able to do if I was just out touting the returns or our financial planning model, or again, those are all very good, but that's not going to tip the scales for somebody that otherwise has a great advisor or thinks they have a great advisor. If in our world, I always say that I never want I don't want the stock market to go down the same way that doctors don't want their patients to get sick. But most of us go to the doctor and have our physical once every 10 years because if we're feeling good, we don't really feel like we have to go and get checked out. But if we're not feeling well, then we're in the doctor's office a day or two later. And I think most people, if the market's doing well, then they're fine. They're content. They're not going to do anything. And I think that bringing people together, finding ways to add value, referring your client's business, and positioning yourself to meet more of the types of people that you want to meet is just a great way to spend your time to not only add value, but to grow your business and to grow the quality of the relationships that you have.
And Derek, I love that because it kind of falls within the premise of Enchanting Lawyer. What I'm trying to do with our blog and our podcast is that we tell attorneys that the new way of doing business is to be helpful, to be useful, to be of value to your clients. And I really love the J. Baer's book, The Utility, where he basically says, the best form of marketing is being so useful that people will pay for it.
Yep.
And so the more, that's why we have a lot of good feedback from our listeners, and our people email me all the time, say, what, I never thought about it, but just being a bit nice and paying attention to my people and putting them together, that's not that hard, but it provides so much value. So I think hopefully people will get that point from our show. And finally, is there a book that you would like to share or recommend with our audience that kind of left an impact on you or you think is good?
Do you want me to go like a business book, or do you want me to?
Doesn't matter.
I mean, it would certainly be nonfiction. Yeah. Let me think here. Well, I just finished reading "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday.
Right.
And have you read that?
No, but I heard about it.
Okay, so Ryan obviously he's a big marketing guy. He's done the book marketing for Tim Ferriss and Tucker Max, has written a couple of great marketing books, but this one is about stoicism, and it's more philosophical in nature, and it's about this idea of taking obstacles, taking bad things that our immediate response is, oh, I can't believe this happened, this is terrible, and training yourself to look for ways that you can turn it into an advantage for you. So it's not a self-help book, and it's not a everything's going to be okay, keep your head up kind of book. It's literally this really bad thing just happened, and in the ultimate scheme of things, we're in a great country. We have a lot of great opportunities. We're healthy, right? Let's not get worked up over it, and even more so, let's see how we can leverage this and make it work for us.
Perfect. And what I'm going to do is we'll put links to the code and the books and also the tools you mentioned in the show notes. So if people want to try that tool you mentioned, I'm definitely going to try it myself. And there, if somebody wants to find you online, what is the best source if you want to verbally mention it?
Sure. So they can go to my website, derekcoburn.com. If they want to, Cadre is just in DC and in Baltimore right now, but they can learn more about that, cadredc.com, and then on Twitter, I'm cadredc as well.
Perfect. Again, links to everything on the show notes. Derek, it's been a true pleasure to have you on the show. I really not only I learned personally very good tips, but I feel that it's really going to be something disruptive for networking. So thank you again for coming on the show. And again, this is Jacob Sapochnik, enchantingglory.com. I would love to hear your comments on the podcast and send us an email. And we'll see you at our next episode. Thank you so much.